I'm speaking with Ian Taylor. Ian's the CEO of Cotton Research and Development Corporation. Ian, I'm really grateful that you've given us some time. As I talked about with you last time we met, SRA is on a bit of a journey at the moment. And also I've been and done a listening tour since I joined the industry, and I've heard so many wonderful things about cotton research and development that I thought it was really a great opportunity for us to hear about the journey of CRDC. So thanks for being with us. If I could start off with just a very simple question, which is, can you tell me, as a newbie, tell me about the structure of the Cotton Research and Development Corporation and how it actually works within the cotton industry?
So thanks, Ros. And so the way that CRDC is structured is that we run a very lean team with a very strong focus on how do we deliver the best RD&E for the Australian cotton industry. So we have a team of 14. Around half of that is in terms of the R&D procurement and management of the RDC, and the remainder of that is in terms of business support functions. We work very, very closely with our research representative organisation. So Cotton Australia is the representative organisation for the cotton industry, and we work very closely with them in determining research priorities and what are the key issues that growers actually want to see R&D investment in on an annual basis. And so we actually have 2 meetings with grower panels from the industry in terms of understanding what their research and development priorities are, and therefore what our investments should be to actually address those. We also have a very close relationship with cottonseed distributors. So cottonseed distributors provide the commercial seed for the cotton industry, but they are also a partner with us along with Cotton Australia in our Cotton Info program. So that's our joint industry extension program that supports all of the information needs for the industry as well. Our revenue streams come from a levy. So we receive $2.25 per bale of cotton that is produced in Australia, and that is very volatile. So we've just been through a period of drought, and that's obviously had a big impact on cotton production right across the whole of Australia. So typically for us, we would have an average, in an average season, we would produce somewhere between 3.5 million and 4 million bales of cotton. In this current season, we were down to about 550 to 600,000 bales of cotton. So probably about 1/7 or 1/8 of our typical revenue streams. But that's not unusual for us in the cotton industry. So the way we manage that is we actually have a reserves policy, and what we try to do is we try to keep around 2 years of full R&D expenditure in our reserves that will actually tide us through these periods of intense drought, which means we can continue to invest in the research that is innovating our industry, but also means that what we do is we focus very strongly on maintaining capacity and capability for innovation within our industry. We don't actually invest in research, or we're not providers of research services ourselves. What we do is we actually look to partner with research providers. So we have a strong portfolio with the state departments, strong portfolio with CSIRO, and we also partner with the universities to deliver the innovations that the industry is seeking. So we work through a system that is highly geared to a strong partnership, and we really look to emphasize it's a partnership. We don't look at ourselves as buying research. What we look to do is actually is to partner in the research that's actually going to deliver the best outcome for our industry.
So Ian, that's fascinating, because as you know, in SRA we do provide research and development, and I've also gone out and spoken to industry, and there's been some questions about how do we prioritise the research. I'd just like to understand a little bit about how you go about working with industry to prioritise the research activities and where you might invest in research.
Okay, Ros. So the way that we prioritise our research is we have a very strong relationship with Cotton Australia, who's our representative organisation. And Cotton Australia works with the cotton grower associations, which are established in each of the main cotton growing areas. And Cotton Australia conducts a survey on an annual basis to identify, well, what are the priorities that growers want the CRDC to actually address in the coming year or our current investment round. That survey comes into Cotton Australia and it's distributed to CRDC, but also Cotton Australia organises 2 events a year, and one of those is around our May Priority Forum. And so it brings representatives of the CGAs down to a forum where we actually work through what the priorities identified right across the industry and how does industry actually prioritise those issues that they have identified for R&D. So we meet with them in May and we go through a process. It's a facilitated workshop process where we work with growers to actually identify what are their key needs for that particular season. What we then do with those priorities is we identify and the issues behind those, and we work through, well, what is the key research question that needs to be answered and what are the outcomes that the industry is seeking. And then we put out an expression of interest to our research partners for them to submit research proposals. We then put those research proposals back before those same grower panels. So they actually get to view every research proposal that comes into the CRDC. They provide advice and feedback to CRDC in terms of their priorities. And so then we take that into strong consideration when we start forming our recommendations to go to our board, and the board makes the final investment decision. But in terms of what we then do is we identify to our board what it is that the panels have identified as their priorities. Do our recommendations actually align with those priorities? And if there are any differences between what we're recommending to the board and what the grower panels have recommended, then we make a strong case as to why we think it needs to be something different. I will say that in the majority of years, that our alignment is between 95 and 98% alignment with the grower panels in terms of their feedback around the research priorities.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think that's, certainly sounds to me like you and CRDC work hand in glove with the industry associations, even to the extent of developing the research priorities, which I think is something that's certainly, beneficial for SRA to consider as well. I'm also interested, as I came into the industry, I've obviously done quite a lot of research and myself, and I looked at, particularly when I first joined, the modernising the RDC program and the importance of extension. And I was interested because this has been a topic in the sugar industry that's been, quite a range of views have come up about how extension and adoption services should be provided to the industry. And I'd say that our model at the moment is a little bit of both, a little bit in between everything. So, and there's a little bit of duplication going on. I'm really interested to know from your perspective and the fact that you've got 14 staff, how do you actually ensure that you get extension services at the grower level that that the cotton industry needs, and that you're confident that the research that you're putting out is actually adopted into practice?
So Ros, we have a very unique model for extension, I think, in terms of Australian agriculture. We have a joint venture partnership with Cotton Australia, CRDC and CSD. And that is that we each invest in different aspects of the extension model. So cottonseed distributors support the regional extension offices, which are based in each of the major cotton growing regions, and so have direct one-on-one contact with growers. Cotton Australia invests in supporting the MyBMP program and the MyBMP specialists, and MyBMP plays a really important part in terms of our extension network as well. All of our research outcomes actually form the basis of the modules contained within MyBMP, and they're updated on an annual basis. So we have a person that works with us that actually looks at all of the modules, goes through all of the research, and then makes sure that the modules contain the latest research information. And CRDC's role in the partnership is we fund technical leads, and so they form the bridge between the researchers themselves and the extension officers, and so they do the development of the extension material for use and application by the regional extension officers. We also support the communications officer. So Ruth Redfern is our communications manager, and she works directly with Cotton Info, as well as also providing corporate communications for CRDC. CRDC also invests in the extension manager, which supports the whole of the program of our extension network, and so has that direct connectivity between the R&D that's being conducted and also how that translates into the field. So we have a strategic plan for Cotton Info, we have an annual operating plan, and the Cotton Info manager looks at all of the R&D projects and works through, well, what is the adoption pathway for each and every project that we actually invest in, and then how does that fit into the key messaging that we want to deliver throughout the industry. So it's a very, very strong partnership for Cotton Info, but it's also bolstered by CSD as basically the commercial providers of the outputs of the breeding program. Have an extension and delivery team themselves that's also based in a lot of the regions, and Cotton Australia also have regional business managers that also are based in each of the cotton growing areas as well. And so collectively what we have is a group that provides some critical mass that covers a whole range of activities. So whether it's from a production point of view or whether it's from a business point of view, and how does that interlink, and how does that then also reference back to the performance of our germplasm. So what we're really trying to give our growers is a complete information package around management and management practices, germplasm and germplasm performance, and business aspects, and which also includes skills and skills development for growers in our industry.
Yeah, and I think, from what you've said, Ian, it's fair to say that, CRDC don't do all of that themselves. They play an important role and they work hand in glove with other participants in the industry. Are you finding that your growers are really supporting that pathway for adoption, and that you're seeing some good results by working with, across those partners in your industry?
Yeah, so the Cotton Info runs its own M&E framework as well, and we also survey our growers to ensure that we're actually meeting grower expectations. And 95% of our growers indicate that they source information from Cotton Info, as well as the the funded consultants that work for the growers. So we have private consultants that work with growers. They access the information resources that we support and provide to the industry, and CRDC also maintains the Cotton Info website that growers and consultants can directly interact with to provide all of the information around extension. So we get a lot of positive feedback. The partnership has been running for 8 years now, and so it took a little bit of time to establish the network and get the people working effectively. And as I said, it was a new system that we put in place, but now it's a very high functioning and high performing team that's really delivering tailored messages to each of the regions. So we also look at a very regional basis. So we don't supply the same information broadly across the industry. We're supplying tailored information to meet growers' needs in a particular area, rather than broad messaging right across the whole of the industry.
Yeah, I've found this model to be really insightful, and I think what I've liked about hearing from you is that it actually takes advantage and uses every part of the supply chain to bring innovation to the growers. and there doesn't seem to, and it's such a lean system, and it doesn't seem to, involve any duplication. So, but really works on taking a partnership approach across the industry value chain. And I think that's certainly something that I've found really insightful listening to you. I'd like to change tack a little bit and talk about, you mentioned earlier that CRDC has been successful in taking its plant breeding area out to Cottonseed Australia. Is it Cottonseed Australia?
So Cotton Breeders Australia is the name of our breeding program, which is it's a partnership between CSIRO and Cottonseed Distributors.
Okay, and I'm really curious about that, because obviously SRA undertakes its own plant breeding, and I'm really, would love to hear from you. What was the reasoning behind, that change, and also has the change benefited CRDC and the industry? Because I've had growers also talking to us about the fantastic gains that have happened in your industry with GM. It's not so easy in our industry, but I'd love to hear your views about, how that's worked for you.
So we went through a period in the 2007-8 drought. Again, it was around, how do we deploy our resources in the most effective way to meet the industry needs? And during the 2007-8 drought, we were funding the breeding program with CSIRO and also CSD, as well as providing management practice investment. One of the key decisions and one of the key discussions for the industry was, is this sustainable as we go forward? And would it be better for CRDC to be more agile and more responsive to the industry needs around management and innovation, and actually have the breeding program commercialised through a partnership between Cottonseed Distributors and CSIRO? So that was the approach that we actually took in terms of commercialising the breeding program. And that enabled a lot of things. It enabled CRDC to free up significant resources so that we could focus on maintaining capacity during that drought, but also really starting to plan ahead in terms of, well, what are the innovations and what are the management practice changes that we want to bring to the industry. But then it also meant that CSD and CSIRO could provide further input and resources to support the breeding program. And it meant that then the full costs of the breeding program were actually supported through investment by CSIRO and investment by Cottonseed Distributors. And similarly, under the license arrangements with the technology provider around GM, which was Monsanto at the time and is now Bayer, it enabled better partnership with the technology provider and also supporting technologies coming into the breeding program. So it actually worked out as a very strong win-win for industry and also better partnership around the breeding program. So for the breeding program now, then CSIRO and CSD fully support the costs of that breeding program, and they have some farms located in this area that provide the basic seed increase and the breeding plots. But throughout all of the regions of Australia, then they also support commercial trials and trials with growers to assess the performance of the germplasm in each of those regions. So growers get to have a look at lines and varieties that are coming through early, and also get to see how they perform in each of their regions, as well as that then informing the breeding program. So we look at it in terms of that we have irrigated varieties. We also have varieties specific for dryland systems, but also as we expand, so our expansion, we've expanded considerably in the southern regions, and that's largely because of improvements in germplasm that will enable us to extend down to those regions. But now as we're expanding into more northern regions, we'll also have varieties that are specific to the tropical environments as well. So it has been a very good partnership. It's enabled CSD and CSIRO to really concentrate their efforts on delivering better varieties and better performing varieties to support industry, and enabling CRDC to invest in other areas to actually support germplasm and management practices around germplasm. The GM technology itself has worked extremely well for the industry, particularly around reducing pesticide inputs to our system. So we've had 97% reduction of pesticide use. I will say, though, that the GM technology is not a panacea for all issues. And so there are pests that we still struggle to control, so silverleaf whitefly, mealybugs, and so on, that aren't controlled through our GM cotton that we need to manage. And also, cotton is herbicide tolerant as well, so it currently contains genes to enable resistance to glyphosate or Roundup. But we also have new traits coming in that will provide resistance to dicamba and glufosinate. So you can apply those herbicides over the top, doesn't affect the cotton. That doesn't mean we don't have to deal with the implications of resistance and manage resistance to glyphosate around that system. And so one of the roles that CRDC has played with industry is to actually develop crop management plans and resistance management plans for the stewardship of those technologies that provides very strong support. And globally, Australia is looked to as an example of how to deploy stewardship programs for GM technologies. So where the US and Brazil and India and China are struggling with resistance to those BT technologies, Australia currently has no known resistance to the BT technologies that we deploy. We're also fortunate that we have a very strong regulatory system, and so with the implementation of Bollgard 3, Australia was ahead of the US in deploying that technology, and that was because of the very strong stewardship program that we actually have and our strong regulatory framework. So it is a great product for us, and certainly our system has become reliant upon the technologies, but we don't take those technologies for granted, and they do have a very strong stewardship program behind them.
So I think what you're saying, it's that, you know, by taking the breeding program out of a CRDC, essentially, you've enabled both organisations, or the newly constructed breeding organisation and CRDC, to really focus on their strengths and bring those innovations to industry. Were the growers resistant to doing that and making that change? And do you think you would have, I guess, gotten the results that you've gotten in your breeding program if you hadn't taken it out and you know, formed that partnership? So
the benefit to CRDC was that we actually received a royalty out of the breeding program as well. So that actually provided additional investment for us. I will say that growers did embrace it because CSD and CSIRO already had a strong presence within the industry, and so were highly respected. And growers weren't concerned that CRDC weren't going to invest in it anymore. They were pleased to see that they still had access to probably the best germplasm in the world. You know, and we have a very strong reputation as providing, you know, the best germplasm globally, and Australian varieties are also used quite extensively in the US. So that was a big step forward in terms of the breeding program. I think it has enabled greater focus to the breeding program and CSIRO and CSD to strongly work on what they can deliver best and actually delivering the best package to growers. And it's allowed CRDC to then support and build frameworks around the breeding program in terms of management and stewardship, which is critically important for industry.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ian. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with you today, but I think, you know, when I spoke to you earlier in the month, what really, I guess, got me excited was what has happened with CRDC has created, I guess, a platform for innovation. And you talked to me about some very exciting and innovative projects. So I'd just like to finish on a question, which is what areas of research are you involved in at the moment that really get you excited?
Yeah, so great question. So I love research, and I come from a research background myself. So one of the key things for CRDC is we are continuously looking at how do we improve and how do we innovate in terms of our system. So some of the things that we're looking at currently are, can we actually have cotton plants that actually produce their own nitrogen source? So obviously nitrogen use within our industry is a significant input and a significant cost, but we're also very much aware of what are the implications from a social license perspective, and also, you know, how do we move to more toward a carbon neutral farming system? So some things like that we're really keen and really looking into in depth. We're also looking at new technology. So what new technologies can we deploy? And an example of that, working with a really good commercial partner that we've identified, is how do we improve monitoring the stress of a cotton plant and basing our irrigation scheduling around plant stress. That's been so successful in Australia that it's actually also being deployed in the US. So again, a really significant benefit to Australian growers, but also something that's having a global impact that then also contributes back to CRDC's growers in the form of royalty streams that then supports further investment in R&D. So that's a key approach that CRDC is taking. So we developed a new business strategy that will enable us to work more closely with commercial partners and global partners to deliver outcomes and innovation for the Australian cotton industry that will enable us to focus on where does the industry actually want to be in 15 to 20 years' time? How do we become a really sustainable industry, and how do we ensure that we are meeting societal expectations around how cotton is produced in Australia?
Thanks, Ian. Look, thank you very much for coming and chatting to us today. I've actually found the insights that you've provided, you know, fascinating in our journey as we're going forward, and I look forward to staying in touch and perhaps partnering with you on some, you know, innovative research programs in the future. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks very much, Ros. And again, as I say, you know, our levy payers are looking for that systems-based research, and so we're really looking forward to partner with other RDCs to meet the needs of all of our growers.
Fantastic, thank you.